All right, what's going on? Drive time, Wednesday afternoon, 15 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Chilly, rainy Wednesday. It's about 48 degrees and raining here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Looks like we're going to have some rain tomorrow and maybe even some snow on Friday before things warming up a little bit on Saturday and Sunday. Happy Wednesday to you, halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend. And as it is every day, it's good to have you with us. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson producing the program today, behind the glass today. The Denver Nuggets are in town to take on the Utah Jazz. Only 2 home games left for the Jazz. It's Denver tonight, then they're going to have Memphis. The final game of the season will be against the LA Lakers. So some NBA basketball. Down the stretch we come. Playoff positioning at stake. Had some good games last night, and we'll have a couple of key matchups tonight as well in the National Basketball Association. Final Four, of course, a few days away, resuming on Saturday. So we get to some college basketball, some pro basketball in the program today. Spring ball rolling along for the University of Utah. We'll get to some college football storylines, some new rules and regulations handed down as it pertains to teams trying to circumvent the transfer portal. Topical around here because you hear the screams of tampering left and right. So we'll give you the details there and see if there's any way to kind of police this stuff. It's not soft penalties either. If you're caught circumventing the transfer portal come spring, you're going to be in some trouble. So we'll give you the latest there from the world of college football. The U.S. men's national team lost again last night to Portugal. So the last 2 matchups they've had, Belgium smoked them, and Portugal took care of them pretty easily. And we are about 70 days out of the start of the World Cup. A lot of people worried about the U.S. men's national team, the current form under Mauricio Pochettino. The Italians missed the World Cup for the 3rd straight time. It's hard to wrap your mind around that. It's not quite like the U.S. not qualifying for basketball in the Olympics, but it's not far off for one of the world soccer powerhouses. The NFLPA and the NFL going back and forth on some player safety protocols, some changes with the way the game is officiated. High speed ahead to the NFL draft, of course. One eye on that, as always, this time of year. RSL back at it, coming up on Saturday for a 2:30 first kick out in Sandy against Sporting Kansas City. And the Utah Royals will play on Friday of this week, coming up on a 7 o'clock start against Chicago. A lot going on. Major League Baseball, of course, the early days of Major League Baseball. Our friends at the Bees had their home opener last night. So good time of year, fun time of year. And in the world of golf, we're just about a week and a day out from the best weekend of the year in professional golf. And, of course, that's Augusta and the Masters Tournament. Talked a little bit about the Tiger stuff yesterday. Tiger Woods releasing a statement saying that he is stepping away. And the word is he is headed abroad for treatment. His attorney asked the judge to approve international travel. The judge signed off. And the reason is privacy. Tiger, his attorney, said he couldn't receive the care he needed in the U.S. because his privacy has been repeatedly compromised. So, of course, hoping good things for a man who simply is bigger than the ecosystem in which he exists, and that is the world of golf. I think that's probably one of the issues there. But good guest list on the program today on a Wednesday afternoon. The TV voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack, will stop by. NBA Daily Assist style with Tim McMahon today. The sporting director for Real Salt Lake, Kurt Schmidt, rolls by, and our friend Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune, who landed here and spent some time on the college football beat with BYU and Utah. He has taken over for Andy B. Larson as the new Jazz beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. So busy show. Happy Wednesday. Craig Bolerjack, Tim McMahon, Kurt Schmidt, Kevin Reynolds, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson. Not to start the show on a bummer or a down note, but I didn't ask you yesterday about, you're a huge Tiger guy. Like, you're a massive fan of Tiger Woods. And I was doing some reading last night when I got home and just kind of trying to kick the tires on the reaction, wondering what a guy like Jack Nicklaus is thinking today. Because I don't know who it is at this point that can really get to Tiger Woods. The reports that he's going overseas for treatment because of privacy, it kind of makes me sad. And I just have to wonder, as I referenced, like LeBron James doesn't supersede everyone else in the NBA. Michael Jordan never even did. I mean, they were massive names. Jeter, baseball. I mean, maybe Ohtani on an international level with baseball. Maybe Wayne Gretzky once upon a time in hockey. But Tiger might be the only athlete in history that honestly supersedes the ecosystem in which he exists. He is the biggest figure in the history of the game of golf. Everybody that's involved in the game of golf owes something to Tiger Woods. And I just have to wonder how much of that comes into play here when you're simply bigger than the sport that you've dominated for so long. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I think that part of that has to do with sport, right? The actual sport of golf isn't as big as football in America. It's not necessarily as big as basketball. So, you know, we're maybe comparing apples to oranges a little bit in that regard. It's an individual sport where it's you versus the world, right? There's not many situations where that can be matched and your stardom can reach that. Maybe if a tennis star comes along, like an Alcaraz that becomes a bigger celebrity than the actual sport. But yeah, there's no one that matches it. Like I said, LeBron may be just as famous as Tiger Woods, but basketball is such a big draw worldwide that it's just not quite the same. So yeah, there's something there. And yeah, as you said, it's just been a real unfortunate, emotional unfolding of all of the stuff that's going on, and a letdown as well, especially after that comeback to win the Masters in, was it 2019?
Yep, 2019.
You felt like he was back, and then he falls apart again, right? So we've gone through a cycle with Tiger Woods where on the course, he is the biggest star in the sport, but then he's also salacious off the course, and it adds to this. And it adds to this roller coaster that we're watching. And ultimately, yeah, man, I just hope that he gets the help that he needs. And at this point, I'm probably punting on hoping that he comes back in some spectacular fashion on the golf course, but we'll leave that to Tiger.
Yeah, you wonder what the next act looks like. You know, a lot of people thought he was going to be the next Ryder Cup captain because we've been getting our asses kicked in the Ryder Cup for so long, and maybe Tiger could solve that. Brian Rolapp put him on the competition committee, and he was in lockstep with friend of the program, Brian Rolapp, the new CEO of the PGA Tour. So, yeah, man, just sad. You know, a lot of people say, how many chances do you give a person? And in my opinion, as many as they need, right? Because we're all human fighting something. So Tiger Woods headed overseas to get some treatment, hoping good things for him. All right, Craig Bowlerjack will be our first guest today right out of the gates. But before we get to Bowler, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores, it's time now for your opening tip. IFA Country Stores, before you know it, it'll be baseball's opening day. Well, it already has been. There's nothing like taking in a game on a sunny afternoon. You can get your field ready this summer with IFA's 4+ lawn care program. It's a blend especially formulated for Utah soils. Get healthy, lush, dark green grass this summer by making your power move today at IFA Country Stores. All right, in case you missed it, the NCAA Division I cabinet approved major penalties, including head coach suspensions and football budget fines for programs that seek to circumvent the transfer portal by adding players outside of the designated windows. So FBS programs that add or sign players who withdraw from their schools but bypass the transfer portal window will have their head coaches suspended for 6 games, which equals half of the regular season. Suspension includes a prohibition on all football activities, that's recruiting and on-field and administrative duties, team meetings, which means your head coach is not even allowed in the building during the suspension. Half of the season you are playing and practicing and planning without your head coach, without his voice, without his eyes, without his brain. Persona non grata. He's not allowed around for half of the season. Additionally, the schools found in violation of the rule would also be fined 20% of their football budget, regardless of whether the head coach in charge during the time of violation is still employed at the school. So if a coach is found guilty of circumventing the transfer portal and the school decides to fire him, it doesn't matter. They're still fined 20% of their football budget. It goes into effect immediately and is retroactive to February the 25th when the FBS Oversight Committee recommended the change. They're seeking to stop what's called ghost transfers, where athletes withdraw from one school and enroll at another without entering the transfer portal. This method that was not previously prohibited was utilized by defensive back Xavier Lucas, who transferred from Wisconsin to Miami, and quarterback Jake Retzlaff, who moved from BYU to Tulane. Okay. So, look, we've talked about this in pro basketball at the time. Tampering is something that people have been yelling about in the NBA for years. And as of the past 4 or 5 years with NIL and transfer portal realities in college football, it's also a topic that a lot of people have been yelling about, not just nationally, but here locally. I'm not going to bring up the names because I don't want to imply that I am accusing one school or one person of tampering with one player, but you just have to look at the kids who have transferred from one in-state school to the next. You probably know the names that I'm thinking of, wondering whether or not they had been contacted prior to their decision, wondering whether or not they had been contacted while serving an LDS mission. That's another thing that's pretty commonplace. So the college football, they first instituted the transfer portal windows officially during the 2022-2023 offseason. There has been a winter window and a spring window, but this year the NCAA, as you guys know, eliminated the spring window. So this year's winter transfer portal opened on January the 2nd and closed on January the 16th. Exceptions for head coaching changes outside of the portal window, that's a different thing. And from what I can tell, this is being applauded by a lot of people across the landscape of college football. And quite frankly, it's probably something they should have looked at when they elected to implement these portal windows. But that would have meant that the leadership in charge of the NCAA was actually able to see the potential damage to the sport that was about to happen as a result of the NCAA being thrown out of court and told you are a serial antitrust violator. Go figure it out. You should have seen what was going to happen then. And it was left to athletic directors and their staff and coaches and their staff to try to figure out how to traverse this landscape with no guardrails or no penalties, no punishment. Because what the Supreme Court also did is they told the NCAA, you are not allowed to enact any punishment anymore, leading to a wide open landscape where things just felt chaotic. So hopefully today, and we'll have to see how they elect to go about this stuff. But hopefully today, so Josh Whitman, who's the D1 cabinet chair, said, quote, this change addresses gaps in the transfer and tampering policies that have allowed for abuse. But we acknowledge there's more work to do. Thanks to the new, more streamlined structure for this Division I decision-making, we were able to take a good idea that originated with practitioners, vet it, and approve it, all in a matter of weeks. We believe closing this loophole simplifies things for student athletes and holds school accountable for their actions. And that's the hope. I mean, the issue is, I'll bring it back to the NBA before we catch a break to bring in Bowler. Teams for years have complained about tampering. For years, complained about tampering. What can we do? How can we stop this? I think that's a fight that the league has just decided, like, okay, we're going to put some guidelines in place, but there's nothing we can do outside of bugging agents and players and coaches and front office executives to find out who they're talking to and when they're talking to them. Because no matter how many times the league believes they have solved tampering in professional basketball, the minute free agent hits, 20 deals are announced. Are you negotiating in 30 seconds? Probably not, okay? So I love that they're putting these things in place. I'm a little bit skeptical about how they're going to be able to enforce it, but this is a good first step for college football to finally come around to addressing some of the issues that has been clearly plaguing the sport. All right, we'll get back to this. Maybe we'll get Kev's thoughts on this. He covered college football for a while, but we'll catch our first break of this Wednesday show and bring in Craig Bolerjack coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. Guess what I just did? You'll never guess what I just did during the break.
Started eating something?
I did do that, but I replied to an email.
Oh,
I replied to an office email.
No, wait. This office?
This office. Yeah, I've got 4 email addresses currently, but I replied to a Broadway Media email that I needed to reply to.
I'm impressed.
See, the nice thing, and Bowler knows this, Bowler, the nice thing about being the talent is you do not have to respond to very many emails, yes?
Only when it says urgent.
Yes.
Or you must.
Yes.
That catches my attention for sure.
Okay, fair enough.
Above the line, they say.
Indeed. How are you, my friend?
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
I'm good. It has been. I appreciate the call. How you guys doing? Jazz, we're heading down the stretch, taking on a guy named Jokic and another guy named Jamal Murray tonight. Another defensive, very much of a defensive test for a very young group of guys.
And you know what? I mean, look, Bowler, it's pretty safe to say that, you know, the season is what it is. The Jazz have played the Nuggets pretty well, though, this season. It's kind of an odd dynamic, haven't they?
It is. Look, when you sit there night after night, and Big T and I talk, planes and buses and automobiles, honestly, I mean, I've been impressed with the effort. They signed Kennedy Chandler to another 10-day this morning. And in the 6 games he's played, I mean, he's not a household name by any means, but, I've been impressed. 14 points, 7 assists. He's been a defensive stopper. The same with Bezim Bang. Ace Bailey's grown. Cody Williams has taken a must-needed bigger step forward. And Sensabaugh and Flip, are kind of showing why they're going to most likely be around on this roster. And, the defense we've seen played, Spence, you got to be honest, there's been moments, and again, players come and go. Minutes are, looked at. The younger guys are playing 35, 36. The Flips and the Senzabaughs are playing 25. But the last time out in Denver, I mean, look, that's the heavy hitter, right, in the West. And a bunch of young guys frustrated them throughout until Jamal Murray hit a couple of clutch late threes, and that was the difference maker. But no, I got to be honest. From my chair, I see guys busting tail. They've been given more minutes. They've been said, look, the audition is on, and they're trying to take the best advantage they can. And I have been impressed. They have not folded the tent. They could easily get run over by 30, but they've been in ball games throughout the All-Star break. Just on a couple of just a few games have they been basically dominated. But I will say, man, they've gone out and played. And even the last time out, we saw Steve Mikhailuk, and it had been 26 days, and he comes out and knocks down 13 points in 9 minutes just to kind of help the cause. I mean, it's a team that has a focus and a purpose, and it is what it is, Spence, as you said all year long, and we all know that. And I just can't wait to see what the draft brings, and also what Summer League brings, and then what camp and how this team really is going to hit the floor running, because there's some talent there. There's some talent.
Tell me what you see from the players who are not playing, and I continue to pray for Nurk and his deviated septum. Get better, big guy. But whether it's Nurk or Lowry or Jaren Jackson Jr. or Keontae, like the body language on the bench as these young players are getting opportunities, what's kind of the dynamic of the guys who aren't playing right now in support of them?
Spence, I've seen this on other teams. It can go one or two ways. Either they are absent and not on the bench and they're off doing their own thing, or you do what the Jazz are doing, and that is engaged, mentoring, involved, excited. Look, Jaren Jackson Jr. just barely had a taste of what the Jazz can be or could be with him. Markkanen knows. Walker knows. Keontae knows, and Isaiah Collier. I mean, it's great to see that they are totally embracing the young guys' development and celebrating. I think is the best word I can, what I see on a night-to-night basis on our cutaways, what I see on the floor. If I'm looking across or I'm above them, you still see, honestly, Spence, engaged, and it's real. Now, this isn't manufactured. I think fans have to realize that. This is a team that kind of senses what can be, and there is early excitement before workouts this summer. But I'm excited to see Jaren Jackson Jr. as involved as he has been. John Conchar the same way, who's getting some good minutes, which I'm glad he is. Kind of, given a chance to let him show with the Jazz what he can be as a defensive stopper. He loves the offense, loves the roll, loves the cut, and he's getting that opportunity to show Will Hardy and others what he's about. But no, I love the engagement on the floor, man. I mean, they're into it, and it's a good thing.
So let's talk about the recent developments with a couple of younger players, and it's always difficult to know how real numbers are with a player who's getting more usage on a team that's unserious about winning. I understand that that's difficult, but nonetheless, I've said all year, like, my hope for Cody is that he watched Keontae last year and said, okay, I've got to work the way he did if I want to stay in this league. And I still don't know, Bowler. I still don't. I can't land on it with him. But there have been more moments with him over the past 6 weeks than there has been prior to. How much of that is he's getting an opportunity? How much of that is he's capitalized? The Suns game was rough, but you're going to have an off night. Like that's just going to happen. Yeah. So tell me what you're seeing from Cody Williams right now.
Well, that's a great point. Look, he had family and friends in Phoenix and 0 for 9. Okay. So that's maybe a young man pressing to trying to impress. And then my next thought was, how does he respond, Spence, from this? Okay, so against Cleveland, he goes 37 minutes, and he took 22 shots, made 11, 26 points. And that was his 5th career 20-point game. And I just, to me, that told me something, that he was able to let it go and that he did not harbor or feel like he was inferior. I think there were some times in his rookie year, obviously, in the first half of the season, I'm with you. You had to have a wonder of, is this young 10th, then this number 10th player taken in the draft actually going to make it? And, the comparisons, I think, have to be discussed too, Spence. His brother's an NBA champ. Look, Jalen, he's an all-star. How much did that pressure him? But then how much did he actually go to his brother? And I've talked to him. I think they've shared videos and they do talk. It's a close family, and that's a good thing. But he also has to realize, pull away some and say, hey, I'm me. I'm Cody Williams. I'm not Jalen. And I think that's part of it. I think he took the next step like Keontae in the offseason, that he had an oh my moment where he goes, I'm going to make this league, or I'm going to be in this league, or I'm going to be competitive in this league. And I think you're right. Since the All-Star break, it's just a totally different player. But the other point you make is that he is not playing 7 to 12 minutes. He's playing in the 29 to 32 minute frame, and that's given him much more opportunity to show off his skill set and to figure things out. If he makes a mistake, does it mean he's going to the bench? And when I talk to Thurl about players who, are mentally focused and tough, that's the next step in this league, is to say one turnover doesn't mean I'm going to the bench or my game or my night's ruined. And for a younger player, and this whole league is young, as we know, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds coming out, and they're not quite prepared for failure or don't understand how to handle it. And maybe, again, I'm no psychologist, but I think that it's the processes we've watched. Filipowski's in this conversation. Keontae definitely has been, Spence. And obviously Cody comes into the forefront as well. Bryce is the old guy, 3 years in, right? So he's a little more savvy on understanding who he is and how he's developing. And I like his game of late, by the way. Going inside out. If it's not working outside, he's got the body to roll inside and showing off some handles as well with dribbling and getting to the rim. But I think all these guys have taken steps in the right direction, and that's what this season really was all about. And I guess, we'll find out how they build a roster in the next month or two, and then what the draft pick, whoever the Jazz get and where they land in that lottery. Last year, what? Sometimes you think, boy, I'd say that 1 pick would have been good. But you know what? The 5 pick with Ace Bailey it looks like it may turn out to be a pretty good selection for the Jazz, and the way that he plays his game and how he fits into what Will Hardy wants to do offensively and on the defensive side as well.
I was looking at some Ace numbers, and I'm just realizing that he's gone for double digits in 30 of the last 35 games. So this isn't just a recent run. I mean, 37 career high against Toronto, 33 against Milwaukee. He's getting rebounds. He actually has a good feel, makes the right basketball play. He had 5 blocks against Philly. I'm telling you, man, I'm trying to temper my expectations. I don't think I've been as excited for a young Jazz player as the kid we saw the other night when Donovan was a rookie. There's just so much to like about who he is, the reputation he has as a worker, and this evolution as a complete player. Tell me what you've seen.
Well, Spence, he came in, he got the flu. Didn't play much in the early part of the season, and then, of course, there was the talk prior to and after the draft. Does he want to engage and play and be in Salt Lake? The answer is yes, changed agents, and I'd say he's been the hardest worker, and I think Will Hardy would echo this, of anyone. He's coachable, he's open, he's likable, he loves the game. It's a joy to be around, and he's a basketball junkie, right? And that's what you have to be to excel. You talked about his skill set. It's just kind of little by little, he keeps adding things. He is a terrific three-point shooter, quick catch, quick release. I'll throw on a number to you because this is from Stokeman, our Stoke master, stat master. But his last 8 is another example. When you start to break down numbers and you look at, just if you just ripped off like 30 of his last 34 or something. His last 8. 22 points and 6 rebounds. But what Will Hardy would talk about is that his near 2 block shots during that span. And his length is ridiculous, Spence. And I think defensively, which is what Will Hardy has preached all year long to these guys, if you want to stay in this league, and this is a damn tough league to make, that's a quote, and it is. All these guys are fighting for limited roster spots, but if you're going to win championships or compete for a Western Conference title, how do you do it? Look at OKC. Look at Boston, as you know, in the East. Those are the last 2 champions, and they did it by hellaciously good D. And you get length, and you think about what the future could be for the Jazz with an Ace, a Walker, and a Triple J and a Market, and it comes at you, just constantly. It's going to be tough for teams to try to work out some sort of offensive plan against a defensive front. And what Keontae and hopefully Ace bring too in the backcourt. So, I'm excited. You can't wish away games because it's all about development. But Spence, you got to think there's some guys who've helped themselves a lot, and part of that help has been that they've shown they can play 2 ways and they can put the effort in on defense that they have to make this roster. Bottom line.
I don't know if you heard this, but after the game, Donovan was asked about being back in Salt Lake. And, of course, Donovan rolls in and he did Donovan things. He continues to evolve into this incredible player. I don't think it surprises any of us who watched him from the time he was drafted. Did you hear him say he watches Jazz games and he hears Bowler and Thurl on the broadcast? Did you hear him drop that?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, it was nice. I talked to him on the floor, and I was kidding him. I said, what are you now, 11, 12 years in? And he goes, hey, man, 9. But, he had a good 5 years here. He developed here, grew up here. He's an easy guy to like. And I watch him, and I'm wowed by, man, his ability as a 6'1", maybe not even a 6'2" guard, Spence. You saw the ability of how he just whips that ball. He's very strong, low to the ground. And T and I were talking about it, that his game has continued to develop. He's very much an inside presence, strong finisher, but, he's got the deadly 3, and he's that 4-level scorer that Thurl always likes to talk about, which Ace Bailey's showing a little flash, Keontae as well. How do you become a 4-level scorer? You have to go and get yourself to the free throw line. That's how you scored 25, 27 points a night. And he's just a master at it. Donovan did his thing here, and, you always wonder what if, right? But a lot of players come and go. But I'd say he's a likable guy, and I hope Jazz Nation will remember that too.
I made it a point to get down there for his first game back after everything went down, so I could, see if I could chat with him for a minute, caught up with him for just a little bit. Now that it's been a few years, does it feel like the uncomfortable nature of how that went down has kind of melted away and everyone's moved on?
It did. I didn't know how the fan base would react this time around, but I just thought it melted. To be honest with you, it just felt okay. It felt like, okay, we know, we accept. There were no boos. There wasn't a lot of, cheers, but it was just like, okay, he was here. We appreciated what he did, and he grew. And I think he feels the same way. I think he seemed comfortable. He had people in the stands, and he was engaged. And that's really Donovan's personality. He's an engaged individual who, still has contacts and friends here. And I was glad to see that. I didn't feel much hostility, Spence, of if any, from a player. And, it was in a strange time, the bubble, the COVID, Rudy, Quinn, the changeover happened, and it was tough. It was tough for a lot of Jazz fans. It was tough because there was, continued potential, but Danny felt like, it was time for a change. And, as much as it hurts to kind of grow through those times, it's been a rough 4 years, right? 3.5. And, now you start to think, well, hopefully, you'll see the old cliche of light is shining from the end of the tunnel, and maybe it is starting to get a little brighter out there, because there are some great storylines that we followed all year long. Haven't even talked about Isaiah Collier, and just what he can do as a pace setter. Can he, he can play off guard or on guard, and Keontae can be off guard most of the time when they're both on the floor. So there's a lot of combinations that Will Hardy's going to have at his disposal in 6 months' time, Spence, that is exciting. And depending on who the Jazz draft and how that fits and who that player is and what position he plays, I think just really kind of lights up the room a little bit on the future of the Jazz, and especially how young this group is.
There's actually a argument, or just I'll call it a conversation, to be made that I mean, look, the bottom line is, if you're running a team and you identify a player like Donovan and you draft him late lottery, and then the player gets the bulk of the credit, but he develops in your system into a all-star caliber player. I've always said, man, you got to try to keep those guys around. I mean, it's not rocket science. You want them part of your future because you drafted, developed, and now he's special. So, let's see what we can do together. But the fact that however the message was sent, okay, whether it was Donovan's agents, whether it was his camp or whatever, because, look, I'll always wonder what if as well, but it was also very clear that as soon as he had a chance, he was gone, okay? It just became clear behind the scenes. So at least the message was sent where Danny was able to get tremendous value for him, because I'll die on this hill and I'll talk about it a lot. One of the biggest missteps, however it took place, was the fact that the Utah Jazz drafted Gordon Hayward, developed Gordon Hayward, and he walked without anything in return. That right there is a death nail. You can't have that. So for people that are upset about how that ended, at least the message was sent like, hey, if you want to get something for him, you better move him now, because Danny got a lot for him.
Right. If you know that the player is unhappy and that is given from the agent or player to agent to general manager, front office, then yes, you can both help each other, is what I think the conversation is. That did not happen in the Hayward, situation. They went out and tried to appease him. He'd already had another plan. And I think, again, that is kind of a haunting memory of how fragile relationships can be. Or if you think that you're going to go to a bigger market, or in your mind, you got to go play for your college coach with Brad Stevens, and then all of a sudden you're injured and really never the same. But yeah, he did develop here from a kid to an all-star. And what's funny, Spence, been around, the league, and as you have, and you see a lot of players come and go. Some leave, and it's a good thing. Some players stay, and that's a good thing. I think Jordan Clarkson, stayed for the right amount of time, and he needed to go because his career beginning to wind down, and wanted an opportunity to be competitive again, and I get that, and and the Jazz can appease that wish. But I've talked to many players who have left and said, man, I wish I'd never had. It's interesting. I think sometimes you're pulled in different directions by family, friends, or pressure, or agents who say, big things on the horizon. We just need you in a big market. And what I mean by that is it's endorsement money, right? That goes beyond the salary. And I think that the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade and what I've seen so far, this is a fresh start for him. And I think this is probably at the perfect time of his career to take a deep breath and say, hey, man, this isn't bad. And I think he sees the growing excitement of what can be. And that doesn't happen very often. Sometimes old vets come in and they're just, okay, part of a trade deal, and it doesn't set well with them. But I got to be honest, K-Love and even Nurkic both, I didn't know how that would, blend is the best word I can think of. But both of them have said many times that this has been a hell of a stop for them. And I think there's a lot of hope that they would like to stay. And, that's not a common theme that has followed the Jazz organization, sometimes, or at least that's what other players will tell, right? You go play in Salt Lake. But I think when they finally land here, they realize this is a hell of an organization that takes care of their players, their families, and the fan base is outstanding. And, what else do you want? You're playing here 41 games a year. You're 41 on the road. And you're supposed to be working your tail off to earn the $40 million that you get. So I think it's a pretty good combo, and I think there's some good things happening right now. I really do. I'm not just saying that, Spence. I feel it. I've watched it for a long time, and I don't see a player that seems to be disgruntled or upset. They seem to be excited about being part of what can be, and that's just straight up truth from my chair.
So I'm reading this book right now. It's called Everything You Want is on the Other Side of Hard. And it's written by a guy who his name is Ken Rideout. And he details his journey. He had a horrible opioid addiction. He was drinking, and he just couldn't find his way out. And then ultimately details his journey, working to overcome his adversity to rise in this ultra marathon community where now he's just like this champion long distance runner. And he does a lot of those long distance events where you're lifting. I mean, he's in great shape. He's now a father and a husband, and he's had a very successful career. The reason I bring it up is I was thinking about this when I saw you on the rundown today. When I went down to the Warriors game, and I'm going to be there tonight. I'll see if I can get there early enough to say hello to UNT.
Yeah, I do.
Everyone to a person all said we're already looking forward to next year. There's no way to escape that the dynamic that this has been hard on everybody. That's Ashley and Ryan at the top, all the way down to everybody that's in that organization. So it's an odd way to ask you the question, but with the premise of everything you want is on the other side of hard, how nice is it going to be to call games for a team next year that's actually trying to win?
Yeah, it's been a few years. And I'll tell you what, Spence, I'll throw COVID on top of that. The last 5, going on now 6, those 100 games we did at Delta Center with no fans and just a Jumbotron sitting in front of my face in Thurles, that was tough. One of the most challenging times in my career because, you thrive off fans and energy, and there was nothing except maybe the feeling of Larry Miller walking around, trying to say, hold on, guys, this place will fill back up again like he had built it for. I really did feel that sometimes. That was tough. And then after the bubble, the Gobert, Donovan Mitchell trades and new coaches. So it's been a while, right? And I got to be honest. I love the Hots, and he had a great run with Carl and John. It would be nice to kind of have that feel back in the state again and drive, down Main Street and celebrate, a Western Conference title or an NBA championship, and I like to drive the bus, with the players. I mean, I'm just talking out loud because I'm like anybody else. I mean, I work, I study, and I love what I do, and I love the interaction with the fan base, Spence. And it would be awesome to know that there is potential to take it to the next level and then another level. And I think honestly, there is potential that the Jazz could be one of the big storylines next season if health stays on their side, because it's intriguing to see an athletic front and a couple of guards and a bench that understands their roles. I mean, that's how you all put it together. And it's hard to think about it the last 3 years or so on the process, but this year may have been a blessing again. I mean, just because we finally have seen some players get a chance to be put in a tight, tough situation and say, okay, can you play in this league? And now I think Danny and Austin and Jay-Z and Will all have some answers on who they want to move forward and who wants to play in this league and who wants to bust tail on both ends of the floor, because that really is a separator, Spence, for the Jazz. If you're going to be a player and maybe a little bit of an aging Western Conference, the timing is perfect because you can make a jump and make an impact. There's still some great talent out there. We're going to see two tonight in Jokic and Jamal Murray. And Devin Booker's not going away for quite a while in Phoenix. But I just think it's been a great testament of the Jazz and the fan base. And you've been there, and I've been to a lot of arenas where on rebuilds it's about 1/3 full. Most nights at the Delta Center, fans continue to show. And that tells me a lot about what they believe and what they see and just how dutiful they are. They always have been, but even more so during this process, man. It's impressive.
All right, Bowler, I appreciate the time on a game day. We'll set you loose. And like I said, I'll try to get down there to say hello tonight, okay?
Do. And we got C.J. Miles in the booth tonight, so drop on by.
Very nice. Very nice. Thanks, Craig. Be good, okay?
All right, pal. Text soon.
Craig Bolerjack, TV voice of the Utah Jazz. All right, we'll catch a break. We got 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Tim McMahon is our guest coming up next on ESPN 700. So me and Louis Riddick aren't that different. Got the ESPN on in the television or in the studio. I think Riddick was at Indiana's pro day.
Yes.
My man's sporting a Roan hat.
Yeah, he's a strong Roan supporter, apparently.
Love it. Love it. So we got Louis Riddick wearing Roan. Another ESPN influencer joins us now.
Should we send Tim a care package?
I'll send Tim as much Roan as he wants. Tim McMahon, how are you, sir?
Howdy, Carlos. How you doing?
We're well.
Open up a care package from Salt Lake City as we speak.
Okay.
The Utah Jazz. Actually, not a care package, just a pack of cards promoting Ace Bailey.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if they were trying to get you to vote for. Didn't they try to get you to vote for Isaiah Collier for something last year?
Definitely got some Isaiah Collier stuff. They promote their guys. They promote their all-rookie candidates on an annual basis. And if they have other candidates, they'll promote those guys too. They haven't had any other candidates in a while.
As they should, and they're promoting the right guy, Tim. There's not a lot to talk about with the Jazz, but Ace has scored in double figures 30 of his last 34 games. This is not a 2-week sample size. He's been really good as of late. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about his growth.
So, one, I think he is a very talented, raw, developing player who the upside is pretty damn high on both ends of the floor. Two, having said that, I want to be careful about evaluating production under these circumstances. When you were playing hooky last week, I reminded these folks that the last rookie to score 30 in 5 straight games was Jalen Green when the Rockets were tanking about this time of the year.
Okay.
So, look, you'd rather see the production than not. All I'm saying is I'm not going to sit here and tell you Ace Bailey has arrived. He could be an all-star next year. There's been some encouraging signs, but again, we all understand what's going on with the Jazz right now and for all season and for the rest of the season. And then we look forward to next year when we can evaluate Ace Bailey and the rest of this roster under normal circumstances where winning the game is a priority.
You're not wrong, obviously, and we try to do the same here. It does lead me to a Cody Williams question, though, because I feel like I'm ready to say that I like Ace a lot. Regardless of circumstance, I just think there's enough there, and the reputation he has over there. I'm still unclear on where I'm at with Cody Williams. In the same scenario with more usage, Tim, he's also put up better numbers. I don't know what exactly that means. What do you think it means?
I think it means that it's worth sticking with him. I think it means that, there's no point in giving up on a kid who is that young so early in his career. There's real glimmers of hope, which, honestly, there were times with Cody where you were kind of looking for him and didn't see a lot of glimmers of hope. But obviously he's still a very young kid. What is he? He's 21 years old still. Only his second year. I mean, he could easily be a junior in college right now. And you always saw the idea of what he could be, right? This long, 6'8", 6'9", athletic, rangy, versatile forward with some playmaking ability. So you've always kind of understood the idea, and he's made progress this year. Does that mean that he's ready to be a rotation player on a team that has postseason aspirations? I'm not sure about that. We'll find out next season. And, I am curious to see what they do with him this summer. I would anticipate, just kind of based on the way that the Jazz have operated, that he'll at least play in Salt Lake City Summer League. Again, you'd much rather see these glimmers of hope than not. But there are still the obvious concerns, primarily that the three-point shot is nowhere to be found.
I'll ask you about one more young player. We'll leave Kennedy Chandler and Bez Miang beside today. We'll just leave them on the side.
Okay.
But Filipowski, all right, so they've been trying to play him at center a little bit. He's clearly not a center. Evan Mobley just smoked the Jazz the other night when the Cavs were here because they were trying to play Filipowski at center. He's not that. I like Cody, I just don't know. I'm a little bit disappointed. I thought I would see more from him this year. But again, in the name of who's going to be here long term, I will ask you your thoughts on this season and the future of Kyle Filipowski.
My thoughts with Filipowski have always been that he's a tweener in the modern NBA. He cannot anchor a defense. So playing him at the 5 when you're trying to win is pretty difficult. But, he can't do anything more than see spot duty there. But he's not a power forward in the modern NBA either. I am skeptical of his upside in the NBA. I think he's got a very bright future in basketball. I'm just not sure that it's on this continent.
I think I'm there with you. For now, we'll see if he does something this offseason, but he's not going to grow 4 inches this offseason, so there's that. All right, moving over to a story of yours, and it's been interesting to follow the Mark Cuban stuff down in Dallas. Obviously, Mark Cuban bought that team, changed the dynamic of who they are, won a championship, sold the majority share of the franchise to the Adelson and Dumont families in 2023. And as you point out, privately has been upset about his business partners. Well, now he kind of brought that public. What's that dynamic like? Like, he's still involved in some way, shape, or form, is he not?
Minimally.
Okay.
I mean, 27% share doesn't give you any kind of juice, no matter how much he kicks and screams and whines and cries in politics and, complains. He claims that he thought he was going to continue running basketball operations when he sold the team. He's the only person I can find that thinks that. There was no language in the contract. There was no discussion of that language in the contract. The language that he claims is taken out just said he was going to be invited to meetings, not running them, certainly not any kind of decision-making power. And then, he thought he was kind of getting back in the mix when Nico Harrison was fired. He was part of a meeting that day. And then he's realized, okay, Patrick Dumont will take my calls, but he's not doing anything that I say. He's not really acting upon any advice, and he's upset about it, which, I guess he has a right to be mad, but that's the only right that he has. He doesn't have the right to make any decisions. And look, if he wants to call out and say, I've sold it to people who don't know what they're doing, he's well within his rights to do that. And, I would say there's certainly some evidence that he would be accurate with that. But nobody made him sell the team. That's the decision that he made. He tried to kind of publicly bully his way into being able to, sell his toy and still get to play with it. But that's not the way these things work. And, again, Cuban's been saying this stuff privately for a while. He said it to me on multiple occasions. And I said, if you want to talk about it on the record, then I'll write it. But he did choose to talk about it on the record. It wasn't with me. And I suspect that's because he wanted to find somebody who maybe wouldn't throw fastballs for follow-up questions. Because there are plenty of follow-up questions. If we want to talk about the mess that the Mavericks have gotten into, Cuban can point fingers all he wants, but there's certainly some blame to be put on his lap, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I think all of us probably learned a tough lesson at some point where you feel like you're promised a certain something, then you go to try to follow up on that promise. If it's not in writing or if you're not on a certain level of ownership, it just is what it is. It's the way these things are set up. What's fair to say about the way the franchise has been run since he decided to sell the team?
Well, there's plenty of things that are fair to say about the way the franchise was run before he sold the team. They had one of the worst sexual misconduct scandals for a franchise in sports history. The general manager who he fired sued him and got a sizable settlement, when the case was settled. Donnie Nelson, that general manager, has had one job or one role in basketball since his firing. It's been as a special advisor for the Slovenian national program, just in case you're wondering how Luka Doncic felt about the way those things went down. So, but look, the Luka trade was the worst trade probably in NBA history. It's not a trade that would have been made if Cuban was running the ship, but simple fact is one of the primary reasons Cuban sold the team is because he couldn't afford to fund a contender. In his own words, he was a middle-class billionaire who couldn't afford to fund a contender. What was going to be the big financial stress point that was coming up? It was going to be Luka Doncic's supermax. So did he sell the team because he knew he couldn't afford to pay Luka and he didn't want to be the guy who traded him? It's a fair question to ask. I think that's one of the follow-up questions that I would have asked.
What's your experience been like with the Adelson and Dumont families, the new ownership group? What's that dynamic like?
Yeah, I talk more to people close to them, people who, kind of their right hand people, than I've never had a single conversation with Miriam Adelson. Don't anticipate that I will anytime soon. My conversations with Patrick Dumont have primarily been, brief and, uh, professionally cordial, I guess you could say. Listen, Patrick Dumont came in, he's the governor of a franchise, and he is learning basketball on the fly. Like, his lack of knowledge about the NBA has been glaring and obvious and very costly to this franchise. There is no question about that. I think he's trying to learn. But, it's funny. The one thing what do you say, what's new owner syndrome? New owner syndrome is meddling and making decisions, overruling your basketball people. He didn't do that. He allowed his basketball people, or unfortunately his basketball person, Nico Harrison, to make major decisions. One major decision in particular, and it blew up in his face. So he didn't have the classic new owner syndrome, but his inexperience definitely cost the franchise. Now, I'll point out, he did not hire Nico Harrison. Nico was in place, hired by the previous owner. So Dumont's got a lot to learn. He's got a lot of cleaning up to do because his franchise is a mess. The only reason there's any hope for the Mavericks is because they lucked in the Cooper flag with the number 1 overall pick. That about sums up that situation. Man, between Jazz and Mavericks, this is off to a really upbeat start.
Oh, we'll get out of the space. I just wanted to ask you after I read the piece because I thought it was interesting that he said it out loud. One more thing here, though. Dennis Lindsey was tied to the job of running the team at some point. Now, he's got a good gig now because Detroit's really good. Is there anything up to, the latest on Dennis Lindsey going back there to run the club?
There is one major, major blemish on Dennis Lindsey's resume as a candidate for the Dallas Mavericks. He's the guy who Mark Cuban wants to have the job.
Ah, all right.
Which kind of crossed him off the list right from the get-go. That's the guy. Cuban had a plan of getting Nico out of there, bring Dennis back in. Boom, boom, done. One swoop. Dumont came around to, okay, Nico needs to go, but he did not want to give Cuban the juice of being the guy who picked the next guy.
Okay. All right, moving into the space of teams that are trying hard to win. Denver's in town tonight. The Jazz have actually played them pretty tough. It's kind of interesting. Now, we know the deal, but they've won 6 straight, 8 of their last 10. Every time you're on, we talk about OKC, San Antonio. Is this a matter of Denver getting healthy? Have they figured something else out? Have they played their way back into the conversation? That sounds like, okay, if you have Jokic and a healthy Denver roster, you cannot discount them from doing something special come springtime.
Yeah, I don't think they ever left that conversation. They just weren't playing very well for a while. I still don't know that they're playing that well. What they're doing is they're closing games. They went through this big clutch funk, and that trend was reversed. I mean, Jamal Murray and Joker are back to putting up just bonkers clutch numbers and closing games and pulling out close wins. Then the other thing is, look, you got to look at who they're playing. They gave up 130-something points to the Mavericks, but won because Jamal Murray had 53 and Joker had almost a 20-20-20 triple-double and so on and so forth. You saw the game against the Jazz. If we're being real, Will had to tank that game by pulling Filipkowski because he was whooping Joker's butt. Joker couldn't guard him. And so there's some concerns on the defensive end, major glaring concerns on the defensive end for the Nuggets. I've kind of compared Aaron Gordon to the duct tape of that defense. Statistically, they are a top 5 defense with Gordon on the floor and absolutely abysmal without him. But you can't expect him to hold everything together. He's not going to play 48 minutes a game in the playoffs. So they still got to figure some things out on the defensive end. Having said that, Jamal Murray's having as good a year as he's ever had, and he's obviously a proven championship player. And Nikola Jokic, you could argue he's having as good a year as he's ever had. He's a 3-time MVP. So nobody's eager to see the Nuggets in the playoffs. I can assure you that.
Speaking of the MVP, Wemby came out recently, said he wanted it. SGA said he lets his game do the talking. The Vegas odds still have SGA as the slight favorite, Wemby right behind, and then Luka in the top 3. Where are you at with this race right now?
I think it's a 3-horse race, and look, Joker's averaging 28 per game, and leading the league in rebounds and assists, and I think he's not really in the race. I think he's fourth in the voting. Man, Luka just had 600 points in a month.
Yeah.
That the Lakers went 15-2. That's pretty strong work. But the Thunder only lost 2 games in the month. And the Spurs, maybe the Thunder only lost 1, the Spurs 2. My point is these guys are all playing unbelievable basketball. As good a month as Luka had, I'm not sure that he closed the gap on those 2 guys. They're all very unique. I still think it probably comes down to who's the top overall seed, because if the Spurs are the top overall seed, I think it's difficult not to put Wemby at the top of your MVP ballot. And I've just spent some time in Oklahoma City, and some folks who are just want to talk about the league. Just ask me about an MVP who averages less than 30 minutes per game. I mean, that's never happened before. So there's kind of some reverse minutes policing going on there. But I also say a pretty good indication of value is the scoreboard, and plus minus SGA is number 1 in the league, and Wemby's number 2. So he's making a lot of impact in not as many minutes, but his impact is pretty damn convincing.
Since you mentioned the Lakers a few weeks back when they had won, I don't know, 7 or 8 straight, I asked you if you had changed your opinion on what they can do come spring, and they continue to play really good basketball, Tim, and they've got Luka, obviously, and they've got some guy named LeBron. Have they figured something out? Has J.J. Redick figured something out to make them more relevant now than they were a month ago?
Well, there's no doubt that they figured out the pecking order, and that I think the figuring out's not the hard part. It's the, making it work, and particularly having LeBron embrace it. And LeBron has played unbelievable basketball since he's been in this less is more third option role. And it puts the ball in Luka's hands. Austin Reeves is going to get the second most touches and shots, and then LeBron's going to kind of fit in with that. LeBron's efficiency skyrocketed. I think the energy of the team, the vibes around the team have drastically improved. And then defensively, they've been solid. They've got real defensive personnel concerns. Those 3 guys, LeBron at 41, Luka at any age, Austin Reeves at any age, put those 3 on 4 together. There's going to be defensive concerns. DeAndre Ayton is not a great rim protector. He's kind of an occasional decent defender. Marcus Smart's not what he used to be. They've got real personnel concerns. So they've figured some stuff out with smoke and mirrors on that end. My biggest question about the Lakers come playoff time is how much can smoke and mirrors hold up over the course of a playoff series against elite competition.
Before I set you loose, I feel like I'm contractually obligated to ask you about LeBron's free agency. What's that going to sound like and look like?
That's a great question. I'm sure you saw our buddy Mac 10 and Bond Temps' story on it. We don't know. I don't think he's retiring, right? I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. I would be surprised to see him retire when he's still playing at this level. There's a lot that we don't know, and I'm not sure he knows at this point. I'm not sure he's decided. And if he hadn't shared his secret, certainly with the world, I'm not sure he's shared it with anybody. One of those is how much does money matter to him? How much does geography matter to him? How much does role matter to him? At this point, I think, and if you'd asked me 2 months ago, is LeBron going to be back at the Lakers? I'd said no way. It's not working. It's not a fit. They've got to move on without him. I am saying that door is certainly wide open now, but it's got to be at the right price point, because they've got one shot to use cap space and this financial flexibility to put long-term pieces around Luka and Austin Reeves. It's this summer before, Austin Reeves' contract's going to be their last piece of official business. So they've got one chance to use cap space. They can't do that if LeBron wants to get paid anything even in the same zip code of not just what he's getting paid now, but honestly anything like half of what he's making now. So how much haircuts LeBron willing to take, I think that's going to determine whether he's back with the Lakers or not.
All right, buddy. Appreciate the time. Safe travels, and we'll chat soon. Thanks, Tim.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Tim McMahon covers the NBA for ESPN. Probably will be back on the Jazz beat a little bit next year. When the Jazz are good and competing, Tim is here often covering the Jazz. He is the ESPN national guy assigned to our market. At Band McMahon is where you find him on Twitter. His latest story is the Mark Cuban conversation, where he admitted that he regretted selling the majority of the Dallas franchise to the Adelson and Dumont families. He made a cool $3.5 billion, so I think our guy's doing okay, but some interesting stuff there because he still is, in a lot of the rooms. Got to be pretty awkward when you say that out loud. Any drive to the basket begins with the first step on the court. That's the ultimate power move. IFA Step 1 Crabgrass Preventer and Lawn Food is the first choice to give your yard the healthy, thick green look you admire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online or at IFA.coop. Stop by one of their neighborhood stores today. Our good friends at IFA. All right, Kurt Schmidt, RSL Technical Director, will stop by in the 4 o'clock hour. And then Kevin Reynolds, our friend from the Salt Lake Tribune. So a busy show on a chilly, rainy Wednesday. Keep it here on ESPN 700. RSL is back at it after a break last week for the international window. Sporting KC in town, 2:30 kick on Saturday. Keep that in mind. 2:30 kick, early kick. Our next guest, sporting director for Real Salt Lake, Kurt Schmidt, on a Wednesday. Hello, Kurt. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Spence. How are you?
I'm well. I appreciate the time. So, international break this early in the season. What sort of dynamic does that bring? You give your guys some time off. You take advantage of the space to get healthy. What do you guys use the off week for?
Yeah, I mean, it gives guys a little bit of time off, gives the coaching staff a little bit of time to work on some things as well that are tough to work on when you're in the weekend to weekend grind of preparing for the next match. So it's a positive from that standpoint. You know, it's a little too early in the season for guys to be, tired legs, but it's good to have a break to work on some things.
Are we getting closer to having, and the announcement came down that Emeka had surgery and Pablo had kind of given us a heads up that we're not going to see him for a while. But other than that, are we getting closer to having this coaching staff, being able to get the entire roster at their disposal?
Yeah, we're pretty close. There's still a couple issues out there. DeAndre's coming back and Arias is almost back. So there's still a few other lingering ones out there, but we're getting closer, and I think the best thing is that the guys who have been given the opportunity in the meantime have given Pablo and the staff a lot to think about and some hard decisions to make. Which
is great. I mean, that's exactly what you want. I wanted to ask you about a dynamic Pablo shared on the show last week about him really giving you and Jason and then Tony, the whole staff, a lot of credit. And I know you include Pablo and the staff in your conversations, but he said we started first with getting the right people in the building, because it's one thing to have talent, and I won't bring up Chicho's name. We'll move on from that. It's another thing to have the right people in the building. Elaborate on that a little bit as you guys go throughout your process of, drafting a Sergi Solans or bringing in a Morgan Guilavogi. What sort of dynamic as a person are you looking for to make sure you have the right people in the building?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always a little bit difficult to get at that from afar, right? And we try and do as much research as we can as far as, digging into references and people who have coached a player, know a player, friends, teammates, and then obviously we have conversations with the player themselves, and again it's difficult to assess from afar, but we try to do our best in that regard, and I think we also try to move on if it's clear that there's not a fit. But what we're looking for is guys that, again, are I don't know if there's a better way to say it than, yes, are good people, like people that you want to be, to maybe use a Pabloism, like in the trenches with, and, someone that you want to look to your right and left in the locker room and have them by your side fighting for you, people that, put the team first above themselves. Humility is key. Hard work is key. Those are some things, so that the non-negotiables aren't something that you have to convince someone to do, that they're a given.
Or even sometimes you have a brother who coaches a player, namely Noel Caliscan, who jumped on the show yesterday. What were those conversations like, and how nice is it to have somebody as close as your literal brother as a resource to ask about a player who you're interested in bringing in?
Man, it's an easy phone call for me to make. I wish he had more players that we could draft and have some inside info on. And I know he's working on that, and he'll have some quality players in the future. But no, Noel was a guy that, it was a real easy recommendation for my brother, for Kyle, to make, in terms of just just listen to me. Don't just trust me. This guy is going to be fine. And, he's someone we wanted to draft in the draft when he came out of college, and we unfortunately weren't able to, but we kept a close eye and picked him up as soon as Portland let him go. And, it's just one of those situations where, we got him, convinced him of the opportunity, asked him to come in and commit to the Monarchs, which, we did for him as much as us. And just, get him into camp until Pablo, hey, like just just trust me, take a look at this kid for a few weeks, and if you're unhappy, we'll have a conversation. But if you're happy, then everyone's happy. So,
do you call your brother for things other than scouting reports on his players?
So every once in a while, I'll call him to ask about his kids and his wife. But no, we talk about a few different things. But we have always had the relationship in terms of the game that it always comes back to that.
Could you beat him up in a fight?
For sure, for most of our lives, I could. These days, it's tough. We've lived far enough apart for so long now that I don't know. We both have dad strength, so that's gonna cancel each other out. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we want to find out.
There we go. Was you were a player for a while? Was he a player before he became a coach?
Yeah, he was. We're off on a tangent now, but I actually coached him for 2 years in college.
Oh, okay.
So I was his coach, which did wonders for our relationship during that time. But yes, he was a player. He played at UC Irvine down in Southern California.
Who did your father love more? All right, just kidding. We can move off of it. I just wanted to get the Kurt Schmidt family dynamic. Let me ask you just a macro question. You can take it whatever direction you want, and then I've got some questions about some of the individual performances. We'll look ahead. And this is through the context of, as you know better than anybody, just how long these seasons are. And this year's unique because there's going to be a World Cup break, but it's undeniable that it's not just the strong start that is leading me to believe there's something different about this group. It just feels like there is. I know that's nothing that's quantifiable. You can't, utilize analytics there. But I've been doing this long enough where you just kind of feel like this group has something a little special that maybe we haven't seen in quite some time. So my question to you is, do you feel that way? And what do you attribute this strong start to the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does feel that way, and obviously, I'm maybe, you can call me negative. I try to be level-headed, and so it's 5 games in, and we've got a long road ahead of us. But obviously, when the early signs are this positive or positive like this, it's something to take note of and to try to build on and grow that feeling. And like it's really intangible. It's just something that you feel around the group, you feel in the locker room. There's lots of different things that can feed into it, and obviously when the results come, the confidence in each other, in our teammates, in the coaching staff, and in everyone just grows and grows, and that becomes almost an unstoppable force in and of itself. But it is early days, and we've got the makings of a really good group here that's doing things the right way, and that's something that just it doesn't happen all the time, I guess.
Well, and the other thing, and I know this is not your silo because you're soccer, but the building feels a little bit different and looks a little bit different. I was at the Austin game, and there are 2 types of sellouts in the RSL ecosystem. There's the Trey Fitzgerald sellout where half the stadium's full, and then there's the actual sellout where it looks like the building is jam-packed. And the Austin crowd looked like the building was jam-packed. So it's not just that the soccer team looks to be very, very quality. It looks like this community is taking note and showing up. Is that fair? Yeah, and you've made it when people name fake things after you. Yes, indeed.
So good for Trey. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think those 2 things feed off of each other and creates a positive feedback loop where the team success gets the community excited, and the community's excitement and passion and encouragement and support perpetuates the team's success. So when you get into a virtuous cycle like that, it's something that you hold on and you enjoy the ride, and you try not to screw it up.
I could list several things attributed to Trey that are unreal. I know you're not a golfer, but there's a Trey Fitzgerald birdie, then there's a standard birdie. So and we could keep going, Kurt, if you wanted to, but we can exit stage left at this point. Tell me about the up-to-date progress. I asked Noel about this yesterday. Just the new formation, what Pablo is asking of the group, and how the group is embracing it, and whether or not you are seeing the returns on the attack you were hoping for.
Yeah, and look, I think the quote new formation is been a positive step, and I think one of the keys to that is that it wasn't it wasn't a 180-degree shift from where we were. It was an effort to essentially defend in the same way that we were attacking, and then plugging in the pieces into that system to really make it tick. And so I think it simplifies the game for the players. It makes things a little more straightforward. We're almost leaning a little bit the other way now with Gozo at right wing back and pushing high and attacking there. But I think with Gnabry on the left, it gives us some danger on both sides of the field, which has been very helpful. But yeah, it simplifies the game for the back line in and out of possession. I think the guys up front have also done a fantastic job of making it predictable and I guess easy for the guys behind them in terms of just being reliable in how they work out of possession, which leads to what we can do in the attack.
So when it comes to 9 goals scored so far, and you're always good to remind me of the simplistic, most logistical response as far as just, yes, we would like to score more goals. So I know you would like to score more goals, but are you seeing as many opportunities as you would like to score those goals based off of both the schematic shift and the player additions?
Yeah, I think the attack has put up some good underlying numbers. Obviously, yes, like you said, we can always improve, and we'd always love to improve. But the early returns have been really positive, and even some good chances that maybe have gone wanting early in the season that we know will fall as they come throughout the year. And I think it's the defense as well. Needing to reduce, it's a math equation, right? Score more goals, concede fewer. And so, trying to win some games by more than 1 goal will be a lot easier on everyone's health as well.
Where do you think you need to be better in order to, because I got the West standings up, dude, and you guys have been great. LA has not allowed a goal. Vancouver, who you saw early on, has been great. San Jose, San Diego. I mean, some quality soccer is being played in the Western Conference. And so to keep up, you guys are going to have to keep going. Obviously, any areas of improvement schematically in the attack, back line, midfield, what have you, that you'd like to see improve?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I mean, look, I'm always thinking about ways we can improve, and I think there's lots of things we can improve. We can improve our ball winning all over the field, middle of midfield, outside the wing back. We can improve our chance creation and our finishing. We can improve our ability to break down low blocks. Like there are a lot of things that we can improve in that way. But they're also not complete weaknesses either, right? These aren't areas where we completely lack. It's just areas where we can grow and improve and still get better. But yeah, I mean, I'm always thinking in that direction.
How much of either the formation shift or schematic shift, the way you want to play this game, because we talk a lot about, okay, are we seeing more chances on the attack? Does this improve the ability to score goals? But how much of it has to do with the skill set of Afa Cabral? Oftentimes I hesitate to do the whole when Ramondo was between the pipes, because Nick holds all the records. But Nick's ability to distribute from the back, I think it was something he never got enough credit for. He was known for stopping penalty kicks more than anything. And I feel like we're seeing Cabral give in a little bit more, leeway, flexibility with the ball at his feet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and he's earned it, right? I think he's shown us his first year with us that, what type of player he is, the experience that he brings, the quality that he brings on the ball, and his shot stopping. And I think it's twofold. Obviously, his technical ability helps us, helps the players relax is maybe the wrong word, but it takes a little bit of pressure off when they know they've got that outlet and that Rafa's someone that is safe to play to, is reliable to pass to, and get us out of trouble. But it's sort of the other side of it helps when we have the ball as well. The defensive side of it, the fact that Rafa's going to be there. When the other team is creating danger, that helps as well, because it takes a little bit of stress out of you when you're in possession. If you know your keeper can not bail you out, but just can protect the goal. If you turn the ball over, maybe you're a little less uptight. You're a little more willing to take that risk and play a more dangerous pass, which actually helps us when we're in possession as well.
Where do you think because I referenced the Emeka surgery. I feel like, with Ojeda, Emeka, the central defensive midfield spot was an area of great depth, and it probably still is because you made some additions, namely Stein. But where do you think you're the deepest on the roster? What's the deepest positional group? Because you're going to get battles all over the place with so many players playing so well right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess but I'm going to give you a funny answer. I think the deepest places we are at center back and central midfield, and those are funny answers because again we did trade Ojeda and Emeka's out right now, and we've added one piece to bolster it, but you've got Griffin and Luka who have stepped in and done a fantastic job, and I still think we have depth and quality there, and we will in the future as we have young players who can grow. And then in the back, it's sort of the same thing where at the moment we've got some injuries with Kobe and DeAndre and Arias, but that's the fact that we've had those injuries and have still been able to plug in players that have helped us get results is a testament to the depth in those positions.
Of the new players, and I know, it's not rocket science. You sign them because you think they're good. You sign them because you think they're going to play well for you. Has there been one of them that has been brighter than even you anticipated over the first 5 matches?
I knew all this was going to happen, Spence.
There you go. Then why didn't you do it last year, Kurt?
What's that?
I said, why didn't you do it last year if you can see the future?
Wow, what a great question. No, look, I'll say this. I think Morgan, especially, I think his creative ability, his playmaking ability, it is something that we thought he had, obviously, and that he could contribute it with. But I do think, especially in transition moments, that has stood out, I think, more than we thought it would, I guess, coming through, which, it's just because I think the difference in league levels and styles of play between where we've scouted him and now coming to MLS. So, but I think his ability to create chances has been phenomenal, and on display the first couple games. And, he's created some really good chances for guys, Sergi and Victor, and, he's already got 2 assists. So, that's been a real bright spot.
So, it's not a hot take to say that folks are a little bit concerned about the U.S. men's national team right now after getting their doors blown off with a couple of games. I've heard more than a few people say that Diego would really help if he's fit and ready to roll. Obviously not part of this last group, but I would imagine the inability to show well for the team over the past couple of games might bode well for Diego's potential to get back in the mix. Give me your thoughts on that, and then a progress report on him. Of course, he's been getting healthy, and when you are unable to be healthy, it's not rocket science. You're unable to be fully fit. He looked like he was a little bit tired when we saw him last. So the progress there, and your thoughts on him getting back in the mix to help this U.S. men's national team as we're about 70 days away from the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan too. So yeah, I mean, I'm concerned. Obviously, I want to see the team succeed at the World Cup and do well. And I think if you're not, if you don't play, if you're not at the camp and the camp doesn't go well, then sure. I mean, there's the chance that you're looked upon more favorably than maybe you were beforehand. So maybe that's something that works in his favor. But the reality is, the worst thing we or Diego could do at this point in respect to that is worry about what Pochettino is thinking too much, right? And the more that he gets his head turned or distracted by that, of course, it's always going to be there. But if that becomes a focus for him, I think it'll take his eye off the ball in terms of what he needs to do for us. Because the reality is, it's down to the wire now. It's the 11th hour, and he was in the mix most if not all of last year, and he wasn't in this camp. Whatever that does or doesn't mean, all he has to do is between now and the World Cup is play as well as he can, show what he can do, show what he showed last year in terms of his fight and his grit and his determination, but also in terms of his production and his ability to score goals and get assists and honestly, and work for the team. I think one of the things that pushed him in there, more and more was his mentality and the work that he did for the team. I remember in the Gold Cup, there was times when it looked like he was playing left back, which wasn't conducive to him creating goal scoring chances, but it showed what he was willing to do to get the result for his team at the moment.
Since we're in the space, this game in a way that I never will. What do you see when you're watching the U.S. men's national team, specifically over the past couple of matches? I mean, all we hear is this is the most talented team we've ever had. And then Belgium smokes us. It was a little bit better against Portugal, but it really wasn't that close. What's going on, and how concerned are you prior to the start of this World Cup that will be played, of course, right here in our region?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think reading too much into anything is probably not a great idea. What happens in a friendly a few months before the World Cup and what happens in the World Cup are two entirely different things, both for better and worse. If we had won both of these games 4-5-0, it probably wouldn't have been smart to think that we've made it and we've conquered everything and all that either. So I think it's important that and I'm sure the coaching staff and the players are like this as well, but not to get too high or too low on things. And if they have confidence in their process, which they do, that they need to execute it and continue to stay the course, and it'll turn out in a positive way. And obviously the coaching staff is going to get the players with more time leading into the World Cup than they normally get these players. They'll have more time to instill their style of play and their tactics and prepare for specific opponents and do certain things. So, it's always going to look a bit better with that amount of time and training under your belt rather than, hey, you fly in, here's 2 days and you play a game. It's not really conducive to putting together a good game plan.
Do you think this is the most talented group we've ever had on a World Cup team?
That's a really subjective question. I'll say it's obviously the most I don't know if I were renowned or, it's the group of guys who's probably playing at the highest level at the moment, right? And, the number of guys that we have at bigger clubs is probably more now than it's been at points in the past, whether it's, talent or not or what have you. I mean, that could mean a ton of different things. And at the end of the day, you got to put the talent together. But, I think it's certainly a group that high expectations are warranted given where their ability has taken them in their club careers to this point.
Will you take a selfie with the World Cup trophy and post it on social media when it rolls through Utah?
I will not.
You will not. Okay.
I don't think I'm going to be in Utah actually while it is there.
I can tell that you're thrilled that the trophy is making its way through our community. Yes.
I'm ecstatic about that. I have a picture of myself with the World Cup trophy, and I was like 12 years old. The last time it came around. So.
Okay.
There's always these little moments that turn you back into a fan for a little bit.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you about the West. Then we'll get a thought on KC and set you loose. Because I referenced it earlier. I mean, you guys are off to a great start, but you're in sixth because there are 5 teams ahead of you playing really good soccer. What do you make of the competition out West and the high-level play that we've seen from a lot of teams, including your side?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just 5 games in, right? And when you're 5 games in, not only is it a small sample size, but the strength of schedule, the opponents, the timing of all those games, plays an outsized role in what those results are and can be. So it's not something that we can put too much stock in. But I want something that I know. That we're trying to execute, that we have been executing, and that I know that other teams in the West have taken notice of is that we're a difficult team to play against, right? And that's something that, is a good thing to be our hallmark. And, having teams realize that we're going to be a tough out, obviously they'll up their game against us, but if we continue to be a team that's difficult to play against and effective in transition like we've been, then, I don't know that matches up poorly against any particular opponent, no matter how talented.
All right, before I set you loose, early kick Saturday. Wonder if that brings in a certain dynamic that you could elaborate on. And Sporting KC, last place in the league, so not off to a great start. So importance of continuing to get results at home, early kick, and what should we know about KC?
They're in an interesting moment where rebuild doesn't even do it justice what they're trying to execute right now. They've hired a new general manager, CSO, whatever his title is at the moment, I forgot. But they've hired a new CSO. They've got a new coach. They released a ton of players. They're trying to sign a ton of players. They picked up a few guys that were free in the offseason. So it's a weird, bit of a tricky team, that is still trying to establish their identity. A coach who's trying to get his players to do, to execute his plan. And it's also a team that's going to, change, if not from week to week, at least from window to window. Like they're one way now. They've already signed, I think, one or two players that'll join them in the summer, and they're going to be a completely different team at that point. But all that being said, and as you said, they're in last place, and I think nowhere does that mean less than an MLS. What the standings are at the moment of the game means almost nothing in this league, but I think we need to continue to establish, Utah and the home field as an advantage, as it always has been throughout the past.
Kurt, you're the man. We're going to set you loose. Go call your brother, okay?
Yeah, will do. Thanks, man.
All right, Kurt Schmidt, technical director, sporting director. I don't know. He's very important over there, makes a lot of the decisions with player movement. Appreciate Kurt's time. Want to let you know that Weezer is taking over the Maverick Center on September 15th. Tune in to OCL Week for a chance to score a pair of tickets. Our buddy Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune will stop by. But coming up on the other side, some new rules and regulations regarding the college football transfer portal that hopefully will alleviate a big issue that we've talked about on this show for years. So keep it here. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go, right here on ESPN 700. Got a new client on the show. It's a new spot, a really, really cool place. It's called Rounds Putt Lounge. Okay, if you're looking for something really fun to do here in Salt Lake, little activity night with your partner, date night with a girl, just guys night, whatever you want to do, check out Rounds Putt Lounge. So they're going to sponsor our Masters tournament coverage coming up next week. Love the Masters, man. Augusta, it's going to be awesome. It's not your average putt-putt. We're talking a fully indoor, tech-powered course with automated scoring, interactive gameplay, and leaderboard bragging rights. So bring your friends, bring a date, bring your coworkers, bring the whole crew. Because whether you're competitive or just there for fun, everyone can jump in and play at their own pace. And it doesn't stop at golf. There's a full arcade, great food like pizzas and shareables, and even event spaces for birthdays, team outings, corporate events, or just an epic night out. And here's the kicker. This is the best part. Rounds start at just $12 with discounted rematches if you're ready for revenge. So whether it's date night or game night, make it a round at Rounds Putt Lounge. Brand new spot. Go check it out. Book now at roundsputtlounge.com and get in the game. Porter, do you think tampering happens in college football?
Not even a little bit.
Liar.
Never happened, never did, never would,
You're
never
lying.
has, never.
You're lying.
Yeah.
I feel like the voices around town over the past couple of years have been pretty loud about some very specific scenarios.
And it's not new. It's different now. It's more front-facing now. It is done in a different way now. There was I would say about a year, maybe 2 years during the collective era where it was under like completely out of hand and also like done dirty. But tampering in sports is like, I mean, unless you get like a law involved, good luck policing it. Good luck doing anything about it. Like, yeah, you can stop guys from contacting a player directly, but the sports world, we can zero in on the football world, is too small to believe that it won't happen on a basis where you can't police it, right? Kyle Whittingham's got in-laws that play football. Kyle Whittingham has, kids and sons that are in the football world, that are coaches, that are around the sports world. I'm just talking about Kyle because it's an easy example there. The sports world is very incestuous. So to believe that you're going to control who people talk to, who people try to sway into their locker rooms, it's a fool's errand. You have to find a way to maybe do it like on an official note where you can't contact that player, this guy at this time during this window. But yeah, tampering, however you want to characterize it, it happens a lot, and it will continue to.
So I'm of the opinion that there's nothing you can do about it, period. Okay. And I've been of that opinion for a long time. And mostly it's the NBA stuff that for years and years and years, and things that I know have happened, seeing things that I saw happen, conversations that I witnessed. And, you'll hear certain teams, and the teams that always complain about it are the teams that are losing players. Obviously, the teams that are actually capitalizing on the ecosystem don't give a rip because it's working for them. So it happens all the time where, the Jazz were upset about the Celtics potentially talking to Gordon Hayward before they were allowed to. But here's your complication, and this is just one example of many. The Boston Celtics were being coached by Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens coached Gordon Hayward in college. So, like, what? He can't talk to his college coach? I'm not allowed to talk to my college coach because he's coaching a different team? And, of course, Brad Stevens and Gordon Hayward were going to keep in touch. And so Hayward ends up leaving Utah, signing with the Celtics. It really is something that I've talked about for years. It was so damning to the growth of the Jazz. And the cruel reality is, as a result of Donovan's ascension and Rudy's development and some of the other pieces, of Joe Ingles signing that nobody saw coming that worked out and was awesome. Like, if they were able to, the perfect scenario would have been because I was asked during that time all the time, like, what do the Jazz need? What's the final piece the Jazz need to get over the hump and actually win a championship with that group? And you know what the answer was? A player a lot like Gordon Hayward when he was here. But if he was going to leave and you knew that, you could have at least traded him for pieces the way Danny did trading Donovan. But the fact that he left and you got nothing in return, okay? You can blame whoever you want. Wherever the blame falls, that was a massive misstep. Jazz were upset that the Celtics, were tampering or whatever. But what exactly can you do outside of policing who a person can talk to at all times? Because you hear in the NBA all the time, like, is there tampering? No, nobody tampers. And then midnight hits the day free agents are allowed to sign and 15 deals are announced. It's like, wait, did you just call him at midnight to offer him the contract? The reason I'm bringing this up is the NCAA Division I cabinet today approved major penalties, including head coach suspensions and football budget fines for programs that seek to circumvent the transfer portal by adding players outside the designated windows, okay? So programs that add or sign players who withdraw from schools but bypass the transfer portal window will have their head coaches suspended for 6 games. That's half of the regular season. But here's what the suspensions include. Prohibition on all football activities, which means recruiting, on-field coaching, and administrative duties like team meetings. You get caught doing this, your coach is not allowed in the building for 6 games. You're going to have to game plan without your coach. Of course, you're going to have to coach without your coach, but you're going to have to game plan without your coach. You can't recruit during that time. All football activities, period, end of story. Additionally, schools found in violation of this rule are going to be fined 20% of their entire football budget, regardless of whether the head coach in charge during the time of the violation is still employed at the school. So if a coach is found tampering, if a coach is found circumventing the transfer portal, and you fire him, it doesn't matter. You're still fined 20%. 20% of your entire budget. Okay, so this rule goes into effect immediately and is actually retroactive to February the 25th, and that's when the FBS Oversight Committee recommended the change. They're trying to stop what they call ghost transfers, okay, where athletes withdraw from one school and enroll at another without entering the transfer portal. This method was used by a lot of players, but most notably Xavier Lucas, who transferred from Wisconsin to Miami, and a guy we know, Jake Retzlaff, who moved from BYU to Tulane. Now, the Retzlaff thing is a little bit different to me, in my opinion. And I don't know how you put an exception in there. Like, he was going to miss 7 games. So what do you want him to sit around while he can't play at all? Like, special circumstance, BYU's a different place, that whole thing, well documented. The civil case was later dismissed. But I don't blame Jake for trying to get a new place to play. So, like, what do you do in that circumstance? Again, a very unique example, but Jake is one of the examples here. So, tell me this, Porter. What are some of the things, and you can delicately handle this? It feels like there's a lot of Ute fans that believe BYU was tampering with Utah players. They were able to get some. And others like a Smith Snowden, they apparently were talking to, allegedly. What are some of the conversations you hear about this dynamic here in state?
I mean, kind of what we intimated, that, yeah, there are those connections that happen, but also those are connections that were made before. Smith Snowden has known people in Utah County since he was 13, 14, right? Like, it all comes back to the point of how can you police who someone is talking to, and the rules that you laid out didn't and don't really affect tampering, right? It's not like if you email this player during this time period, that's when the punishment comes down. It's just about when that kid transfers. So as long as he's in the portal early enough, tamper all you want, if that's how you want to characterize it. It's hard because like I said, it happens all over the place. These relationships are expanding beyond the particular football programs. Sometimes they're cousins and all the above. But what would happen if you tried to limit that happening, right? The actual tampering is they'd just have their uncle talk to the coach, and then the team would take the NCAA to court. And I think that they'd probably win. Right? Like you cannot prohibit someone from talking to another human. So that's where it gets difficult. I wonder how this will affect it, how teams will work around it. But I can guarantee you one thing is that it's not going to stop teams and coaches who either want a player or a player who wants to play in a different place from checking out their options, right? That's something that's not going to stop, and I don't think you're going to have any ability to stop it. But I guess this will make it so you have to be a little more careful, a little more formal about when you do it and how early you do it, right? You think that's not happening still in the handshake lines in back offices like that? That's just that's wishful thinking on the NCAA's part and on fans' part. But yeah, it happens here. It happens everywhere. And again, it's not something that I think is limited to college football. This is just something that happens in any professional setting. The way to stop this, Spence, make guys want to be where they are. Make guys happy where they are. Outside of that, I really don't think that it's going to do much as far as the, quote, tampering goes. It'll just limit the ability to sign guys in a certain window, as you mentioned in that January transfer portal. So
the College Football First instituted the transfer portal windows, plural, 2022-2023. There's been a winter window and a spring window. This year, as you guys know, the NCAA eliminated the spring window, so the transfer window opened on January the 2nd, closed on January the 16th. There are exceptions for head coaching changes outside of the portal window, and then, of course, the teams that are still playing in national championship games and such. So spring transfer window, the general managers around college football, a lot of them talk to The Athletic. Basically, to summarize, suspected that players and teams would use the, quote, blind transfer method to change teams following the completion of spring practice. To Porter's point, if players were unhappy with their place on the depth chart or teams identified positional needs that weren't sufficiently filled in January. But today's rule passage closes that loophole, at least it's supposed to. Here's the other thing to consider. Students withdraw from school and transfer all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so you're not allowed to do what a student can do if you play football, which is interesting. By the way, the players would not be punished in this scenario. The sanctions are on the player's new team. My spidey senses are up to think that teams are still going to try to do this and then just sue the NCAA.
And
because they all win.
And I was going to say, and that hasn't been real tough as of late. The NCAA in court, outside of actually last week, I think they won a few things, and they're doing some things with the gambling stuff. They haven't been real successful in court, especially when it comes to limiting what an 18 to 22-year-old kid can do, where he can play, money he can make. Like that, they're just going to keep losing in that regard. I don't know, man. To bring it into the radio studio, it's kind of like when, and listen, we will and always try to go through the proper channels, book interviews and the like, but it's like when the school, rather than the NCAA or the team, tries to tell you, like, you can't talk about this, or you can't talk to this player, or you can't do this and that. Like, my cousin plays for the Utes. He's a tight end. I'm going to talk to him. I'm not going to make an interview request every time I want to talk to someone who is the child of my uncle, right? So there's just no way you can work around like those specific things in a world where everyone knows each other and everyone is related, whether familial or not. It's just a web that you can't untie. So good luck with it. You maybe fix the calendar a little bit, and I actually do think fixing the calendar when it comes to the transfer stuff, when it comes to college football's chaos, I think that's actually a good step because the calendar is what makes a lot of it an issue. But yeah, you're not going to stop the actual talking between players when they may want to see greener grass, whether it ends up being greener grass or not.
ESPN just reported Tiger Woods is not going to be the captain of the Ryder Cup team.
Oh, that quick, huh?
Well, anyway, so 2 weeks ago, The Athletic, let's give them credit, our guy CK, Antonio Morales, Manny Navarro, and Sam Kahn Jr. This was, 2 weeks ago. It's like a spring football confidential type thing they did, interviewing a bunch of people. One of their portions was they asked staffers in the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, the SEC, and the ACC. I already said that. I already said the ACC. A bunch of questions about the current landscape of the sport. And they went through, okay, who has the best class? One of the things they asked these staffers, quote, is it possible to successfully acquire priority transfers without tampering? Is it possible to successfully acquire priority transfers without tampering? Here are some responses. They granted them anonymity in exchange for their, quote, candor. AC staffer once said, no, not at all. You need to do it, and every school in the country does it. It sucks. It shouldn't be that way. There should be strict rules, but if you want to compete, you've got to operate in the gray, unfortunately, if you want to be able to win games. Again, the question is it possible to successfully acquire priority transfers without tampering? Big 12 staffer said this. I think it is. We took some guys we didn't know about. We took some guys we didn't know about until the portal opened. You have to be very diligent. You have to work very fast to make up ground, but I do think it's possible. The staffer out of the Big 10 said, I'd say it's very difficult. The few we reached out to, once they went in, you're late or it's done. Of course, the SEC staffer said this, a stern bleeping no. It's impossible. Some guys start during the season. If it's not the agent, it's the cousin or the best friend or the Pop Warner coach. Somebody is going to reach out and say, this guy is going to the portal, and we want to see where you guys are at. So even these staffers, for the most part, agree. To summarize, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. There's a little bit of a dissent, but not a lot. And again, I know there are a lot of people in our market that believe BYU is tampering with player X, Y, or Z. A couple of you players ended up down there, some really good ones too. But if you read this piece and if you listen to these staffers, most of them believe you have to do it, and more or less everybody is doing it. So this will close this loophole, but it won't affect, it really has no effect on the broader dynamic of poaching or tampering, whatever you want to call it. Another interesting piece before we catch a break, how big a roster budget does a school need to be competitive in your conference? ACC staffer said probably about $20 million. If you go the Indiana route and coach your ass off and hit on every guy that you bring in, it could be $10 million to $15 million. Big 12 said this. I would say at least $15 million. But that's probably the bottom, somewhere between 15 and 18. We know people are living above the cap, which is legal until somebody comes out and does something about it. Big 10 says 30 mil to be the top tier in our conference. SEC staffer actually points to Texas Tech. He said Texas Tech is the standard. You have to be in that $35 to $40 million range. It's hard to only spend $20 million unless you're going to get a bunch of group of six guys that are gritty and want to prove themselves. $10 million is what one quarterback can cost these days. The most we spent on one guy was $5 million. Now, remember, as a result of the public records being released by University of Utah a couple of weeks ago, outlining the details of Witt's exit, as part of his contract extension ask, $20 million to allocate to his roster. Is that a little bit of a light on what Utah football is going to spend? Or it will spend on the roster under Morgan Scalley? I don't know. But ultimately, the guy that brought up, the SEC staffers said, 35 to 40 mil, unless you get a bunch of group of 6 guys that are gritty and want to prove themselves. Utah did that in a lot of ways. So I don't know, man. A changing landscape of the sport continues. But those are hefty sanctions. For your coach to miss half the season and for you to be docked 20% of your budget if you're caught doing this. I mean, maybe this is one loophole that has been closed that will start to move us into this space of getting a clearer picture of exactly how to do it in this sport and maybe even the playing field a little bit. Kevin Reynolds covered college football for the Salt Lake Tribune for a while. He's now on the Jazz beat as Andy B. Larson has moved on. We'll bring in Kev after a quick break. But before we break, new client on the show. And I'm excited because I work with them and have worked with them for about 2 years now. It's my friends at Game Day Men's Health. If you have not taken advantage of this offer, now's the time because you get half off your membership for the entire year. So it's still early in the year. It's April, okay? So take advantage of the offer. Here's the deal, though. 3 months behind us in the new year. Did you set a goal or an intention or a resolution or whatever to lose weight, get in shape, get back in shape, or get into better shape? After 3 months, how is that progress going? A couple of years ago, I set that goal. Okay, I want to get in the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. Just decided I was going to finally do it. We all talk about it, right? But without action, it's just you're blowing hot air. So started working out, started eating healthy, started doing everything I thought I knew how to do to get in shape. And I'm a little bit older now. It's not as easy as you get older as it was when you were a young buck. So after a couple months, I was pretty frustrated. I'm like, man, this is not going the way I thought it was going to go. Talking to a friend about it, he recommended Game Day Men's Health. Asked if I had ever supplemented testosterone before, which I had not. Game Day Men's Health is giving you right now the same deal they gave me and continue to give me, by the way. Makes it really affordable. Step number 1 is you schedule a free consultation. And if you tell them you heard me talking about it, that consultation is free. That contains a little bit of blood work. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes. Then they'll sit with you, and they're going to go over your levels and show you where you're doing well and show you where you need to maybe get a little help. And for me, it was supplementing testosterones and then utilizing their peptides. So I started down that road, and within 2 months of using their stuff, combined with what I was already doing, I saw 10 times the progress that I was making prior to. And so I continue to work with them. I go in for blood work every 3 months. They show me where I'm doing well. And if I'm deficient here, then we adjust what I'm taking. And it just works. And also gives you peace of mind to be able to get blood work done every few months instead of waiting like once a year for your physical. So, and they keep track of your progress. They put a plan in place for you, okay? So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. It's GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Locations in Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, and South Ogden. Find the closest one near you and tell them I sent you, okay? Because you get the free consultation. But the big kicker is 50% off your membership all year. And by the end of the year, hell, by football season, you might be in the best shape of your life. Game Day Men's Health. We'll catch a break. Kevin Reynolds is our guest coming up next on ESPN 700. If you guys are looking for spring football sound, the Morgan Scally era is here. Head to ESPN700sports.com for the latest coverage and sound from Ute Spring Ball. That's brought to you by, Big Willie's Game Day Men's Health, Burger Fusion, and Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. ESPN700sports.com. The Utah Jazz welcoming the Denver Nuggets tonight. Our next guest is now covering the Utah Jazz for the Salt Lake Tribune. Improving golfer Kevin Reynolds on a Wednesday. Hello, Kev. How are you?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm well. Before we get to that, I don't want to catch you off guard here, so I'm just going to set this up. You wrote a piece on the Utah Academy spot where A.J. DiBonsa played his high school basketball back in 2004, yes?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I want to dig into this for a minute because Doug Gottlieb, there was a video surfacing of Doug Gottlieb yesterday where he basically said no player has ever been colluded with or tampered with more so than A.J. DiBonsa because Ryan Smith funds this Wasatch or Utah Academy. He funds BYU basketball. Somehow, some way, that is going to land A.J. with the Jazz. Doug, they probably need the number 1 overall pick first, but I don't know much about this Utah Academy at all. Kamrani pointed me towards your piece. So tell me what you learned about the Utah Academy. What exactly is it, and what landed A.J. DiBonsa there to play basketball?
Yeah, I saw this from Gottlieb too, and it was actually interesting to me because I thought, first of all, I think A.J. going to the Utah Jazz is mostly the longest of long shots unless somehow the Jazz wind up with the number 1 pick in this draft and probably lose a lot more games and have a lot more teams win games with like eight games to go or 7 games to go or wherever we're at. So that's the first thing. But the story, I think, is a lot more interesting, honestly, than Ryan Smith's involvement or non-involvement, because 2 years ago, or 2024, when AJ came down here, I drove down to St. George when the DiBonzas were first in Utah and AJ's first trip to Utah. And this school basically did not exist. I mean, it existed in name, but they were moving the campus down to St. George, and it used to be this old teen treatment center that got shut down by the state because somebody died and they got sued. And essentially after that, these on the same campus, like the horse stables are still on this campus. Like the gym hadn't even really been built there. The weight room didn't really exist when I was there. And these guys came in with the dream of selling AJ and his family and a couple of other high-end prospects on this idea that they could build the next IMG Academy in St. George, Utah. And they also thought that they could get satellite campuses in Haiti at the time, I believe, and essentially kind of build this powerhouse in Utah and build this pipeline for elite prospects. And one of the things we reported on in that story was that obviously they were giving compensation to players to come in, and also offering, I believe we reported that they offered the DiBonzas a part ownership stake in this. At least that's what the people in the leadership group of this new high school said. But at the same time, basically months after that, by November, the place was basically falling down. Falling apart. Or at least it wasn't everything it was expected to be. They wanted to kind of have a very quick build out of not just basketball, but bring in the top golfers and have a bunch of sports charge like $70,000 for tuition, and have kids from all over the country, also academic, just not even non-athletes, come from all over the world, and just hasn't really taken off like that. They've had different leadership since then. There's a lot going on in this story, but I actually think it's more interesting than the Ryan Smith angle. I know that's what everyone's talking about, but this campus is a lot different than just BYU, Ryan Smith, Utah Jazz.
So ultimately, how did they land AJ? Because the picture here that you guys have the trib, AJ and his dad Ace are walking into a building that basically is a wooden skeleton of something. That
was supposed to be the gym. That wasn't built.
Yeah. I have so many questions. Like, how did they land him, and where did he play? How did this actually work for him?
Yeah, well, basically the thing is like, I asked this at the time. I was like, they did have a small, like, basically, what you would see in like a middle school or not even a high school, I wouldn't say, like in terms of like they did have 2 hoops inside this place and they did have like a small court and there was like 1 bench for seating, but they thought they were going to build this other place, a brand new structure that was going to be a gym. And so that's the picture you're seeing there. But they essentially pitched him in terms of like the mechanics of the season. They really didn't play any home games. Like they were playing essentially like a AAU prep school, like national prep school type of schedule. So they were really never in St. George. And when they were in St. George, very few times they would play in like an off-site, off-campus, pre-built out, warehouse or whatever it was, or, an arena of some kind. Right. So that was that. But they, I think a big part of it was this idea that AJ would kind of be this trendsetter. Instead of he had already played at some of the top prep schools in the country. He had come from Boston, then moved to California, and he definitely could have gone other places. Mount Baird, like a lot of other places. Ace talked about how they were reaching out, to him with money. But this was a place that offered the idea that AJ could kind of be the first of a long line of these potential top picks in the NBA draft coming to high school in St. George. Obviously, it was lucrative. You could make money. You could have a part ownership stake. And it was kind of built out through that, and it just never really materialized. So, or at least, he did play there for a year, but at least it hasn't looked the exact same way as it was supposed to be. But he did play with other top prospects. Their point guard went to Washington, I believe. Another guy is going to play locally in the state. He's on a mission right now, I think. I'm trying to remember some of the details as we go through it, but yeah, it was crazy. But it sets up the time for it also sets up the mindset, I think, of AJ going to BYU in a weird way, because obviously nobody expected the top pick in the NBA draft or potential top pick to go to BYU. Never been done. But, this is kind of, I think, one of the interesting parts about the AJ Devonza experience is he hasn't been scared necessarily to make decisions that look very unconventional for a player of his stature, and goes to BYU and obviously, now sets up for his NBA career. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, we're not done here, Kevin. Just so you know, this Brent Woodson dude has some real P.T. Barnum energy. Like, this reeks very much of a speak it into existence, fake it till you make it type stuff. Was he the guy that was behind kind of this entire thing?
Yes. In terms of was it his money? No, there was other backers who were still from there. There was leftovers in terms of the leadership from the teen treatment center that had gotten shut down. So there was still some money involved there. But yes, he was a big part in getting AJ. They had the relationship, or at least he had part of the relationship, and he pitched this idea of essentially this completely new, different IMG Academy light, or could be different IMG Academy, and I think promised, to bring in academic people, where, these are, I think he had the quote of heads of state, children of heads of state, and coming in to St. George and living there on campus too, because obviously you have to provide housing in a situation like this. And the Devontas moved to St. George as well. But yeah, he has an interesting backstory. I'd have to go back through and read it just so I don't misspeak, but you're right. There is a ton of backstory there in terms of he had been involved in a lot of other projects. And also then he also wasn't, by AJ's, by October of that time, by the time he was actually there and they were playing, he was not involved in the project anymore, and they were going a different direction with how they were going to build it out, because the models just weren't very sustainable at the time, or at least that's what the leadership said after they changed directions and said this was too much, too fast, definitely difficult to play out in real life.
He said he was going to get Novak Djokovic's tennis coach to run the tennis program. He said Pedro Martinez was going to come run the baseball program. And Leonard Armato, Shaq's agent, was interested in helping with volleyball. I'm quite sure none of these things happened, yes?
Yeah, no.
Jeez.
They did get one golf player, I think, Kihei Akana, I think, right? He's a BYU guy now.
Yeah, he's good.
So he was there. He's pretty good. But, in terms of everybody else running the programs hasn't exactly looked like that. No.
So did they give Ace equity and did they pay AJ? Is that how he landed there?
I don't know what actually happened in real life. I just know about the promises that's what we reported on. So as far as like what actually he got in the end, I'm not, and what everybody got in the end, I'm not sure. I also don't know, equity is one thing, but it has to be equity of something. And what is this current state of Utah prep right now? Also up in the air, definitely not what it was promised to be when you're charging $70,000 in theory tuition. And then by October, that was already slashed in half, so yeah. And now he's obviously at BYU, or was at BYU, but it's, it's crazy.
Okay, and now our guy Brent Woodson, I'm just reading, he moved to New York to become a banker and work in marketing. Oh, of course, he graduated from BYU. Stunning. Did business in 52 different countries, he said. One connection led him to working for a Saudi Arabian prince. Dude, this guy is something else. $120 million of assets on the Red Sea. Is that the update? Is our guy Brent Woodson back in New York making shady deals with the Saudis?
I haven't talked to Brent in a little bit, but I don't know what he's up to now. I do know that it was a short-lived tenure, but yeah, just a lot of crazy stories, when you're talking about like his credentials and what were they, but at the same time, like, I guess they were enough in terms of believing that, at least the Bonzas believed him enough to come there. And I also think, when you go to that campus or when you went to that campus, it wasn't exactly like, you definitely heard all the pitches, but at the same time, I can't emphasize enough. And in the pictures, you can't emphasize enough. Like, this was not built out, and it did not look like this was going to be, smooth sailing. Now, Utah Prep, what it formerly was before AJ came, it was, I believe, the RSL Basketball Academy, right? Mm-hmm. I think that was, so that was going under too. So you have to know, like, this was a time when I think, like, you're like, how did this happen? How did this come about? It's like, well, you kind of have a bunch of people coming in and building something new off like a team that doesn't really have any direction anymore. Now, like, they're finding out what's next, because that whole year before AJ came, it was difficult. I mean, they were still playing, but it was essentially like, how sustainable is this? Are people going to leave? And then once you have AJ, though, like, that was one of the things that Brent Woodson kept talking about, is like getting AJ was so important to them, because if you have the number one player in the country, no matter what the actual situation looks like, you can get other guys to play with him because they want to be recruited. And where AJ goes, like, eyes and college coaches, scouts, all of it follows. So you can kind of make do once you have an AJ DeBonza on your roster, no matter what. But then it's like, what comes after AJ? So the full court press was to get AJ first, and then, like, get everybody else to follow on, afterwards. And that was why AJ was so important to this operation in general.
Dude, this is mind-blowing. So our guy Brent Woodson said he also worked with Pedro Martinez to bring a beachfront baseball stadium to the Dominican. Breaking news that did not happen. Daily Beast reported he was claiming connections to the Saudi royal family, so he'd partner with a former operative with a Utah nonprofit operation, Underground Railroad, to plan a controversial resort on the remote Haitian island, which also did not happen. This dude, I need to get this guy on the show, man. Holy smokes.
Yeah. And that was also part of, like, some of these connections are also they're tied to that project too, because again, like, this was a guy who also promised to have not just the campus in St. George, but also campuses using his connections internationally in other places to bring in some of the students that he was talking about, which were, in theory, like, the children of heads of state, and, like, how does that happen? How do you get them to St. George? Well, that was part of his pitch, is he had connections previously to it,
Huh. Is there any direct line to be drawn from AJ playing at Utah Prep and then landing at BYU?
Yeah. Not in terms of, like, the connections, in terms of, like, was this set up by, the headmaster of Utah Prep? No, not necessarily. But here's the interesting part. So the day I went down there was like a Friday or something. I can't remember. It was like, I think Thursday or Friday. And AJ had not been to Utah at all. That was his first time in Utah. And they were going up the next day to go to see BYU. And they were going to go see some of the in-state schools. And honestly, like, I don't think this BYU thing would have happened if you don't have some familiarity, at least with Utah, the state, not Utah Prep, but the entire state. And Kevin Young flew in. They were in the NBA playoffs, and he flew in from Minnesota at the time and basically gave him this whole pitch. But it was part of this, like, introduction to Utah. So how would BYU have the audience with, like, a guy like AJ? Probably not. And, like, AJ was honest. Like, I talked to him that weekend, and he's like, I haven't talked to Kevin really at all outside of, like, 10 minutes on the phone. And he really hadn't been visiting many colleges at the time either. Like, he didn't go on this world tour of, 500 colleges where, everybody wants them. He was very selective about where he visited. And that's how BYU even got on his, like, very select few of, like, 6 schools that he went on official visits with, and ended up going to that, college, Fox Sports College game day, I think, against Arizona. And that was, like, where they made the formal pitch to him. But, that was critical, I think, to get in the door, get some familiarity, because when you're going up against North Carolina and Alabama and, Dukes of the world, like, where is BYU rank for a new head coach who has never played, has never been in college before? And the Utah prep trip was critical to BYU getting him in Provo.
Huh. This is really interesting. Is it strong to use the term charlatan for a guy, Brent Woodson? Because ultimately none of his plans came to fruition, and they basically like, dude, you're done. Nothing you said is happening. I mean, how full of bleep is this guy is what I'm asking you, Kevin.
I don't think that's my place to say.
Yep.
I think people can say that. People can make whatever decisions they come up with. But I do think what I can say is, yes, the project looks very dissimilar to the actual reality, at this point in time with Utah Prep and what AJ's year was. And also, like, AJ's year was quite turbulent, even when you talk about the basketball program. Like, even for 1 year, they changed coaches. They weren't, like, this wasn't a team that was making deep runs. They hired a former NBA guy to be the coach there. Was it Keith Smart? I don't remember the exact who took over there, but they changed coaches in the middle of the season. It was rocky. They didn't have a very experienced coach at first, coaching this team, which in theory you would say, like, wouldn't you want a really experienced guy to come in and coach AJ if this is a long-term plan and you want more coaches and recruit for the next cycle? A guy who's proven and has credentials. So they didn't really start out with that. It was just like, again, it was just like a lot of moving parts in it. And it kind of felt like they got AJ, and then everything else, like, I think everything else would fall into place after that. But, if you don't have the plan and if you don't have the solid foundation, it's not just going to come together because you have the best basketball player in the country playing for your team. And I think there's just so many moving parts as to how he ends up in Utah Prep. And honestly, I don't think it's a lot to do with Ryan Smith. I think it's way more interesting than Ryan Smith.
In a way, it underscores AJ's brilliance, that despite all this, the plan is still perfectly on track,
Right. Yeah. I mean, how many times do we see, like, a top prospect who's in high school not even materialize in college, much less, become an NBA, like the top pick in the NBA, and like, he's going to do that. And I mean, he's been, for all of BYU's troubles this year, and they're well documented, and part of it's injuries, part of it is just they weren't playing well before the injuries too. But at the same time, like, I don't think AJ DeBonza has ever been in question. I mean, the leading scorer in college, putting up 35, 40 points a game. Like, he was clearly the best player on the floor every single time he stepped on the floor, maybe outside of that Kansas game. But, I think it's impressive in that sense. And also, like, I also think it gives a peek inside, like, how the DeBonzas have handled such a generational prospect in general, like how they've gone about, like, navigating this space, because Ace also talked about that. Like, he's the guy who was a police officer at Boston University. Like, it's not like he came in and had, like, this game plan and this map of, like, okay, like, we're going to go to the top prep school in the country. We're going to do, we're going to go to the top basketball program in the country. Like, he's been navigating it too and trying to figure it out for himself and try to put himself and like his son in the best position possible. And, you know, in a lot of ways, I think that's quite admirable, is like figuring it out and not letting, you know, the idea of like, you should go here, you should go to Duke, you should do that, you should go to North Carolina. And, but at the same time, like, you know, also when you're at that level, I think it also shows like everybody's going to pitch you on everything to try to get AJ to play for them, even for just a little bit, because of how great this guy really is at basketball.
Yeah. I mean, certainly nothing should detract from his ability and who he certainly is as a prospect. But before I say you lose, because now that I have read that story, I had to ask you about that entire dynamic. But look, unless you want to talk about Kennedy Chandler playing 40 minutes, I will. Neither do I. I will ask you, since you're new on the beat, what you think this thing can look like next year.
Yeah, that's been the thing, honestly, that I've been trying to figure out, because it's really hard when, like, every game you have 3 10-day guys, 2 10-day guys, a two-way guy coming up for a day, hitting a game winner, then immediately going away, you know, like Blake Hinson did against the Warriors. Like, so what does this actually look like? And, you know, the one thing I keep thinking is, like, obviously, yeah, it's about Lowry and Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler and Keontae, but also increasingly what at least I've seen in the 2 months that I've been here is the growth from Ace Bailey, how critical that will be potentially for next year. If you add a draft pick to the mix, add some, you know, minor adjustments here and there in terms of like what can you get in free agency, like is that a roster that theoretically could compete for a play-in, compete for, you know, playoff spot? I'm not an expert in the NBA by any means, but it does seem like that's probable. And they have, even with, you know, a bunch of 10-day guys and two-way guys, like they have been competitive in these games. You know, I don't know what that says necessarily. I don't know if that reflects more on other teams or reflects on the Jazz, but, you know, Jazz fans seem to be sweating it out every night in terms of like, oh gosh, could this team win? And so I think that's where it goes from here. And like the most critical development has been like Ace Bailey now without kind of like the training wheels or the deferring to Lowry, having to be the main offensive weapon. And I think really showing a lot in that role down the second half of his rookie season. And maybe it can springboard him into next year and being, you know, if not a starter, you know, a very, very important piece of a roster next year and having a lot under his belt.
Kev, you're the man, bud. Thanks for the time. Have fun at the game tonight. We'll get you on soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, Kevin Reynolds, Salt Lake Tribune. Appreciate his time. We got to catch a break. Final hour of the show is next on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping up the program for today, this Wednesday afternoon show, halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend. I'm going to say sad news to end the show, but hopefully good news moving forward. Puka Nacua he has checked himself into rehab. So according to Puka Nacua's attorney, in a statement confirmed with the California Post, Puka has been working on some of his issues in a rehab facility in Malibu. So Levi McCathern, I think is his name, gave a statement. Puka has been dealing with this is not a statement, but, there was a situation, multiple off-field incidents involving alcohol, anti-Semitic remarks, and a biting charge on New Year's Eve. So here's what his agent said earlier, quote, let's see. So his biting accuser filed something against him late last month. The combination of stories y'all have run is certainly a contributing factor. This is from his agent. He was in there a substantial period of time before any of these allegations broke, and he's scheduled to be there for a while longer. Puka Nacua's goal, according to his agent, quote, is to improve his overall behavior in every aspect of his life that he can do. So, stories out there. Puka Nacua has checked himself into rehab in Malibu. There's a lot at stake. With Puka right now because, of course, he is due for a payday. Not the most important thing by far. You want this young man healthy because, man, is he a good football player. 4-year, $170 million contract. That's the number being thrown around if the Rams want to go in that direction. What are your thoughts on this? Because this kid has all the potential and talent in the world. I'm not being hyperbolic. If you look at his production, he could go down as one of the best wide receivers in the history of this game if he just stays on this track. And I was talking about this with Sean. Like, I hate getting these alerts on my phone that Puka, once again, public intoxication. He's been accused of this, anti-Semitic remarks. Hopefully somebody here, whether it's his high school community or his college community, can get a hold of him. But good that he's addressing it. I'll say that.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, if you just look at production, there's almost no one that matches what he's done in his first couple years in the NFL. There is no one that matches what he did in his rookie year. Not the important part, but he's going into a contract year. So if the production is what teams expect, he could be one of the highest paid players in the league at the wide receiver position, and rightfully so. However, there's another aspect to being paid millions and millions of dollars of being an athlete, and that is what you do off the field. And I'll just tell you from knowing the Nacuas, covering the Nacuas while they were here, including one that was a wide receiver at the University of Utah, the fact that this was never an issue while they were on campus is a miracle, right? There's been a lot of loose behavior from Nacua, from Puka, since he was 19 years old. So this is something that now obviously it's escalated. This is something that's been needed to be addressed. Now it's kind of out there. It's in the open, and he has to address it. Otherwise, it's going to kill a career that could be, as we've mentioned, really, really impressive and fruitful. Like you, it sucks when these updates happen, but it's something that obviously you just have to address. We're talking about Tiger, we're talking about Puka. These are guys that are not just athletes. They're humans and flawed and in that way redeemable as well. So thinking of everyone involved there, and hopefully he can figure it out, because it's, number one, unacceptable, some of the stuff that he's doing, but also not the end of the world if you can find your way out of it and correct some of those things.
People are redeemable. If I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. So the info is he's actually been in this Malibu facility for a while, and his agent is saying he's scheduled to be there for a while longer. Plenty of time to get this right. All right. Jazz game tonight. They're taking on the Denver Nuggets. The Mammoth are off tonight. They're back in action tomorrow. Utah Royals on Friday, then RSL on Saturday, Final Four Saturday as well. So we'll have a fun couple of shows to wrap up our week. Porter, what comes our way on a Thursday edition of the program?
On a Thursday edition of the program, we're going to talk a bit of soccer on the show tomorrow as we did today. Brian Dunseth from Apple TV, Dax McCarty from Apple TV. We're doubling up with those guys. We'll chat with Richard Smitty Smith, talking hoops, as he joins us in studio for an hour, as he does each and every week. And then, well, we got plenty to talk about with our friends from Handy and Handy on Sports Court.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. There's no doubt. All right, that'll do it. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you to Craig Bolerjack, Tim McMahon, Kurt Schmidt, and Kevin Reynolds for any of the sound you missed. The website is ESPN700sports.com. Download the app. Take us on the go. Then I'm asking you to support two podcasts. If you like me, and even if you don't, if you hate listen, good news. You can do it whenever. Reality Check with Spence Checketts, wherever you get your shows. Then this program, The Drive with Spence Checketts, is available also on your podcast platforms. Subscribe, rate, review. If you say nice things in the comments and give us all the stars, it really helps out the projects. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Wednesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Thursday Drive right here on ESPN 700.